Have you ever looked at your dog and didn't recognize the animal in front of you? He growled, showed his teeth, maybe even tried to bite, and you just stood there, not understanding what happened. Most people in that moment think the same thing. That's just how he is. Or he's badly behaved. Or worse, he suddenly became aggressive. But here's what no one tells you. Dogs don't become aggressive out of nowhere, never. Aggression is always a response. There's always a cause. And in the vast majority of cases, that cause is something the owner is doing or not doing without realizing it. This isn't about blame, it's about lack of information. And that's exactly what we're going to fix today. In this video, you'll learn the 5 main triggers that turn a calm dog into a defensive one. 5 real reasons, backed by science, that most owners never stop to understand. And do you know the cost of not understanding this? You keep living with an animal that is suffering, that reacts, that scares you, and the bond between you slowly starts to fall apart, silently, without you knowing why. I'll go through all 5 one by one, but I'm saving the most misunderstood for last because it affects dogs that seem well-behaved, and it's the one most owners never stop to notice. Let's start with the first one, and this one you've probably already experienced. Imagine this scene. Your dog has his favorite ball. You walk up to him, just to play, just to check, and he growls, maybe even shows his teeth. What do most people think? He's being badly behaved. He doesn't respect me. Wrong. Completely wrong. What you just saw has a technical name, agonistic behavior. And it's not bad behavior, it's instinct. Think about a dog's origins. Before domestication, they had to compete for food, shelter, and everything that ensured survival. The animal that didn't defend what it had lost it, and those who lost often didn't survive. That instinct hasn't disappeared. It's wired into your dog's nervous system. That ball isn't just a ball. To his brain, it's a valuable resource, and you, approaching without warning, are a threat to that resource. Animal behavior science calls this agonistic behavior, defensive responses that include growling, showing teeth, and, if the stimulus continues, biting. It's an escalation sequence. Your dog is actually giving you warnings before acting. The problem is that most owners don't read these warnings, or worse, they punish the dog for growling. And that's where something dangerous happens. When you punish the growl, you don't eliminate aggression, you eliminate the warning. The dog learns that signaling is dangerous, so he stops signaling. And one day, without any warning, he bites. What does this say about your bond? It says he doesn't feel safe enough to trust that you won't take what's his. This is teachable. It's reversible, but it requires you to understand what's happening before trying to correct it. Resource guarding isn't a lack of love, it's a lack of security. And speaking of security, the next trigger has everything to do with that. But here, the problem isn't what he has, it's what he feels when you touch him. Have you ever tried to pet your dog's belly and he reacted badly, turned, growled, pulled away, or even went further than that? And you felt confused. But I was just petting him. Exactly. And that's where the problem is. Not every touch feels like affection to a dog, and not every part of the body welcomes contact the same way. Science calls this aversive touch, a physical stimulus that the animal perceives as threatening or uncomfortable, even when the owner's intention is completely affectionate. This happens for 2 main reasons. The first is biological. Dogs have highly sensitive zones: paws, ears, tail, muzzle, and especially the abdomen. These areas are rich in nerve endings and, from an evolutionary standpoint, are vulnerable regions. An animal exposing its belly is putting itself in a position of risk. Your dog's nervous system still carries that memory. The second reason is historical, and this one is specific to your dog's life. Dogs that weren't properly socialized to touch as puppies, that went through negative experiences or simply never learned that human contact is safe, can develop what ethologists call touch hypersensitivity,
a very low tolerance threshold that can be triggered by any unexpected contact. And here's the worst part. The owner interprets this as aggression, as bad behavior. But the dog isn't being difficult. He's communicating a boundary. He's saying, "This bothers me. This scares me. Stop." The problem is that we haven't learned how to listen. Think about it for a second. If you touched someone who has chronic pain, without warning, with pressure, in a sensitive area, what would you expect? Exactly what your dog does. The answer isn't punishment, it's learning. Learning which areas he tolerates, learning how to approach in a predictable way, gradually building a positive association with touch, especially in the areas he tends to protect. Touch sensitivity isn't aggression, it's a boundary he never learned to communicate in another way. And you can change that, with patience, with awareness. If this is making sense to you, consider subscribing to the channel. We post every week to help dog owners understand what their animal is trying to say before he needs to react for you to listen. The next trigger is the one most people ignore because it seems too obvious, but the reaction it causes might surprise you.
Be honest. Have you ever pet your dog somewhere and he suddenly turned, teeth showing, completely different from his usual self? And you thought, he attacked me for no reason. But what if the reason was pain? This happens far more often than we imagine, and it's one of the most dangerous triggers of aggression, precisely because it's invisible. Dogs have an extraordinary ability to hide pain. It's not stubbornness, it's evolution. In the wild, an animal that shows weakness becomes a target, so instinct says, hide it, endure it, don't show it. That means your dog could be feeling chronic pain for weeks, even months, and you wouldn't know until you touch the wrong spot. Science calls this pain-elicited aggression. It happens when a stimulus, in this case touch, activates nociceptors, the body's pain receptors, and the nervous system responds with the only immediate defense mechanism available, reflexive aggression. It's a reflex. It's not anger. It's not malice. It's the body saying stop in the only way it knows how. And here's the detail that changes everything. The dog doesn't choose this. Often, right after he bites, he seems confused. Sometimes he even tries to come closer, licking the spot that hurt, because he didn't want to hurt you. He was just in pain. What should you watch for? Any behavioral change that seems to come out of nowhere. Reluctance to jump onto the bed, difficulty getting up, loss of interest in games he used to love. A dog that used to tolerate touch but now reacts, that dog might be asking you for help, not with words, with behavior. And if you punish him for that, you're not correcting a problem, you're ignoring a symptom. Pain that goes untreated turns into fear, fear turns into aggression, and misunderstood aggression becomes a problem that will grow until someone actually gets hurt. If your dog reacted to touch unexpectedly, the first question isn't, "What did I do wrong?" It's, "Is he in pain?" Take care of that first. And now, the next trigger is connected to something that may seem very different from pain, but comes from the same place, the feeling of having no control over what's happening around them.
Do you have a dog that gets everything? Attention whenever he asks, food whenever he wants, the ball, the couch, your lap. And one day you say no, or you try to take something away, and he explodes. Most people's first reaction is he's spoiled. But what's happening goes much deeper than that. Dogs who get everything they want, without limits, without frustration, without no being part of everyday life, develop what ethologists call low frustration tolerance. In neurological terms, here's what's happening. The dog's brain learns that certain behaviors, nudging, barking, pushing, insisting, always produce the desired result. This pattern gets wired into the reward circuits of the limbic system. When the result doesn't come, when you say no, when you hold the leash, when you remove the treat, the brain interprets it as a threat to that established pattern. And then comes the response, frustration that escalates into aggression. It's not tantrum behavior, it's neurology. Think of it this way. Imagine you spent your entire life in an environment where every time you reached out, you got what you wanted. One day someone holds your hand back. What do you feel? Confusion, then anger, then panic. That's exactly what your dog feels. And here's the uncomfortable part. The responsibility for this isn't the dog's. It never was. He didn't choose to be this way. He was shaped by an environment that never allowed him to develop the ability to deal with frustration. Frustration tolerance is a skill. Like any skill, it has to be taught. And it's taught by gradually exposing the dog to situations where what he wants doesn't come immediately, and where that no isn't the end of the world. The process is slow, and it requires the owner to let go of the idea that giving everything equals loving well. Sometimes the greatest act of love is a boundary. Not a boundary imposed with anger or punishment, but one taught with consistency, calmness, and clarity. A dog that learns to hear no without collapsing is a dog that's more secure, more balanced, and happier. Now it's time for the fifth trigger. This is the one I mentioned at the beginning, the most misunderstood of all. And it's the one that most affects dogs raised in loving homes with present, attentive, caring owners. Because the problem in this case isn't a lack of affection, it's the absence of a specific kind of experience. And that absence comes at a high cost.
Since the beginning of this video, I told you I'd save the most important one for last. This is the moment. Lack of socialization. It sounds simple, it sounds obvious, but let me show you what's really happening when a dog hasn't been socialized, because it goes far deeper than he doesn't know other dogs. Socialization isn't just about introducing your dog to other animals or different people. Socialization is the process through which a dog's nervous system learns that the world is safe. There's a critical window in a puppy's development between 3 and 14 weeks of life that ethologists call the sensitive period of socialization. During this window, the puppy's brain is literally building the neural maps that will determine how he responds to the world for the rest of his life. Everything he encounters during this phase, sounds, smells, people, surfaces, other animals, gets recorded as safe. Everything he doesn't encounter gets recorded as unknown. And for a dog, the unknown is always potentially dangerous. Now think about the life of a dog who stayed at home during this entire window, who only knew his family, his apartment, his daily routine. The first time he meets a stranger, his brain triggers an alarm. The first time he sees another dog, his autonomic nervous system shifts into fight or flight mode, what neuroscientists call a sympathetic response, with the release of adrenaline and cortisol. The first time he hears a car horn, thunder, or any unfamiliar noise, it's panic. And panic in a dog has no rational outlet. He has no words, no abstract reasoning to say, it's okay, it's just a sound. He has a body, and that body reacts. The aggression you see, the frantic barking, the growling, the attempt to bite, is fear wearing the mask of threat. It's an animal in panic that has learned that the best defense is to strike first. And do you know what hurts the most in this story? The owner did everything with love. Stayed home with the puppy to protect him, avoided difficult situations to prevent stress, gave affection, attention, safety inside the home, and still, without meaning to, created a dog that is afraid of the world. This isn't failure, it's lack of information. And at this point in the video, you now have that information. There's no perfect time to start socialization, but there is a point where it becomes harder. The earlier you expose your dog to the world in a gradual, positive, and safe way, the easier it is for his nervous system to learn that the world isn't a threat. But even adult dogs with a history of poor socialization can improve. With patience, with professional help, with a conscious decision not to give up. Because that dog who growls at everything, who reacts to everyone, who seems impossible, he isn't angry at the world. He's afraid. And fear, contrary to what many think, isn't weakness. It's a request for help. That moment when he growled at a stranger, or ran away from another dog, or barked non-stop at a car horn outside, it was never random aggression. It was him saying, in the only way he knew how, "I don't understand this world yet. I need you to make sense of it." That request was never small, and it shouldn't be small to you.
If you've made it this far, you're already different from most people. Most owners think they understand their dog, think they know them, think that if there were a real problem, they'd be able to see it. You didn't assume. You wanted to truly understand. And that's exactly the kind of owner we want here on this channel. Subscribe, because every week we bring a topic that most people ignore, about behavior, about connection, about everything your dog is trying to communicate that we were never taught to hear. This isn't content for people who just want curiosity. It's for those who want to truly understand the animal they share their life with. And before you go, tell me something in the comments. Which of the 5 triggers made the most sense to you? Which one did you recognize in your dog? Maybe you saw item 1 and thought, that's exactly it. Maybe item 5 hit you in a way you didn't expect. Whatever it is, write it down below. Because when you name what was happening, you've already taken the first step to change it.